everyone. Today we are going to be talking about Block 1, Unit 2, where we will study the prenatal development, genetics, environment, influence, and hazards of development. Now, in the previous unit, that is Unit 1, we were looking at the basic overview of lifespan development. What is lifespan development? What are the characteristics of lifespan development? Why is it that, lifespan development occurs in stages? What are the stages it happens in? What are the changes it consists of, etc. Over here, that is Unit 2 onwards, our focus is now going to shift on understanding the lifespan development that happens at different phases or stages of life. So, the first stage that we're going to be looking at is the prenatal development, the stage that is from the time of conception to birth. Moving forward, we look over at the concept of prenatal development. So, as I mentioned before, it is from the time that the person is conceived to the time that they are born. Conception requires or consists of three things: the ovum, embryo, and fetus. So, the ovum, the unfertilized egg, gets fertilized by a sperm and then goes on to be called as an embryo. And when that embryo grows further and starts resembling a human baby, we call it a fetus. This fetus, upon being born, is called a baby. 5 factors that affect development of a child. The first one is obviously the genetic factors. Of course, if there are any genetic problems, if there are any genetic disorders that are present in the genes of the baby, of course, they are going to have an impact on its development. Let's say autism, or let's say bipolar disorder, or any other learning disability that is genetic in nature. If anyone in the family had it, or if any of the parents had it, then there's a high possibility that it gets passed on to the child as well, thereby affecting the child's development. Non-genetic variables, on the other hand, refer to those which are related to the mother's health. So, as we move forward in this unit, you will realize how the nutrients that the mother gets at the time of pregnancy, the things that she consumes, the practices that she practices at the time of pregnancy, how all of these things can also have an impact on the baby and thereby predicting the child's development. Fast learning, as we know from the famous tale of Abhimanyu, right? How he knew from the time that he was in the mother's womb how to get across the Chakravyuh. Similarly, it is believed that when babies are there in the mother's womb, they are learning, they are observing things, there is still some amount of learning that is happening even when they are in the womb. So those kind of past learning can also have an impact on the child's development. Environmental factors refers to when the child is finally born. Is the child receiving that nutrition? Is the child being breastfed constantly? Is the child getting that love and nourishment from the mother and the loved ones? How is the family's attitude towards the child, etc.? And lastly, we have the socio-cultural factors. The socio-cultural factors, this differs from culture to culture, religion to religion, based on what traditions the family follows into which the child is born. So, many people believe that, famously they say that the kundli that the child has, what were the stars that were aligned at the time the child was born or not, which star has a dominant effect on the child, राहु चल रहा है या उस पे बहुत ज्यादा जुपिटर का influence है, such kind of talks also is known to predict the child's development, though not scientifically proven, but of course it is something, a big part of the society, and is of great importance to the family that the child is born in. Hence, that also has an impact on the child's development and the way the child is perceived. Next, we look over at the objectives of this unit. So over here in this unit, we are going to be looking at the concept and characteristics of prenatal period, the stages of prenatal period, the genetic factors, the attitudes of significant people towards the child, and lastly, we look over at the common physical hazards in each subdivision of the prenatal period. Over here, we start by looking at the beginnings of the life. So, of course, this is the first stage of lifespan development, the first stage where the child is now getting formed. So, development starts from conception. Conception, in very simple terms, all of us must be aware of at this point, it refers to reproduction practice that humans engage in. So, it is sexual intercourse, wherein the male and the female come together, engage in sexual intercourse, wherein the males will release sperms, ejaculate inside the female vagina. thereby leading to the sperms meeting the ovum, the unfertilized egg. And when out of the millions of sperms that are released, when that one sperm finally reaches the ovum, that is the unfertilized egg, and fertilizes it, that is when conception has occurred. So that ovum, the unfertilized egg of the woman, has 23 chromosomes, and the sperm that is coming to meet it has 23 chromosomes. So when they both meet and the fertilization takes place, the end product is that of 46 chromosomes, that is 23 pairs of the embryo. Now, out of these 23 pairs, 22 chromosomes are called as autosomes. That is 22 pairs of chromosomes are called as autosomes. And the 23rd pair, that is the last pair of chromosome, is called as the sex chromosome. Sex chromosome in women, the sex chromosome is XX. In men, the sex chromosome is XY. So when a male and a female meet, depending on which chromosome the sperm has, will determine the sex of the child. Now, most commonly or in the earlier stages, it was often believed that women are to be blamed for the child being born as a girl or a boy, that the woman did not do her job well. But in reality, and as science supports it, it is actually the males who are responsible for the sex of the child, because a female will always have XX chromosome. It is the males whose X and Y chromosome exist. So when the X chromosome from the male meets the X chromosome of the female, XX leads to daughter being born. And if the Y chromosome of the males meets the X chromosome of the woman, that is when the end product is that of a son. So at the end of the day, the gender of the child, the sex of the child, sorry, is determined by the males, because they are the ones who have X and Y, whereas females will always have XX chromosome. Moving forward, why is sex important for development? So first of all, like the point that I discussed previously, society has set expectations for a particular sex. As open-minded and as progressive we have become as society, I would myself say that the traditional beliefs and the stereotypes are now starting to break and change, because everybody is growing past it. There is a lot of progressive changes happening, people are more outspoken, etc. However, if we look over at the historical nature of things, or we look over at how things have been in the past few years, we realize that society has set rules and expectations for each of the sex. The males are supposed to be tough, they are supposed to be rough, they are supposed to be the man of the house, they are supposed to be the providers and strong. The females, on the other hand, are supposed to be emotional, they are supposed to have more of a caregiving role, they are supposed to be more um, supportive and understanding, and always there for the man and the family. So those are the expectations that the society has from the sex. So sex is important to know, because somewhere it also prepares the family or lets the family know that what is to be expected of the child. And of course, we have research that determines that males behave in a particular manner, females behave in a particular manner. So you also know what is to be expected of your child, what is considered as normal by the societal standards, and what is considered to be abnormal for the societal standards. Next, we have is the learning experiences are also based on sex. So, as the simplest of examples, when children start growing, blue is used for boys and pink is used for girls. Girls are made to play with Barbies, boys are made to play with cars, right? So, those kind of experiences that you've had, once again, I would say that now things are changing. It's not necessary that boys are always playing with cars or that girls can't play with cars, etc. Once again, I would say that the things have progressed, but somewhere the rigidity of the stereotype and expectations from the sex remains. And we are now tapping onto those points, that sex, knowing the sex of the baby helps us know what is to be expected from that child. What are the things that the child will like more? What are the things that the child will dislike? What kind of a tone will be well perceived? What kind of tones will not be well perceived? So, as it's said that men don't like being talked to in a very childish way. They don't like when you're being overly emotional or overly caregiving, or you're telling them that you will take care of something for them, because it's an innate trait of males to do things on their own and not being told what needs to be done. On the other hand, females find it very attractive if somebody is offering to help them, because they see it as a way of the other person showing genuine concern and wanting to help them, rather than them dismissing the female off. So such kind of attitude, such kind of expectations comes from the society and the learning experiences that the child has at an early age. Lastly, we have the point of attitude of the immediate environment. That is, when the child is born, the attitude that the family members has towards the child. Now, some, let's just take the example. For example, the family, I'm talking about a very orthodox traditional family, was expecting to have a male child, and instead they give birth to a female, a daughter. Now they were expecting a male, they wanted a male, they ended up with a daughter. It's possible that they will start resenting the child. They will try to, roughen up and toughen up that daughter, to the extent that the daughter is very, as you may say, like a very macho man or very masculine or tomboyish in nature. Why? Because the environment, that is her family, was not accepting of the fact that she is born as a daughter. They wanted a son in the first place. So they started treating their daughter as a son. They started, toughening her up, giving her a lot of challenges and treating her like a son and everything. And that in a way shaped her personality and her development. So those are the things that we look over, that how the attitude of the immediate environment can also have an impact on the child's development. And lastly, we look over at the fact that males and female cells differ from each other in a number of ways. The male cells will undergo two preparatory stages. One is that of maturation, and the other is that of fertilization, while the female will undergo three preparatory stages of maturation, ovulation, and fertilization. These stages will be elaborated on in the next slide. Maturation. Now, if I were to put it across in a very simple term, when a female is born, it is not that a baby or a, let's say, 3-year-old girl is capable of reproducing or is capable of bearing a child. No, it is only after she starts with her periods or the menstrual cycle, menstruation, is she capable of bearing kids. Similarly, men, when boys are born, it's not that immediately they start ejaculating sperms. It's after a while that they reach puberty and they start ejaculating, and only after a point do the sperms become capable of being strong enough to make their way to the ovum and fertilize it and bear children. Now, this whole process wherein the female and the male bodies are becoming mature upon puberty is called as maturation, if we look at it simply. Looking at it scientifically, it is a process of chromosome reduction wherein one chromosomes from each of the cells during puberty will get, will split into two, and is now a matured cell that has now 23 chromosomes, and the matured cell is called as a haploid cell. So this is like a scientific explanation of it. On a simpler end, we look at the fact as to how puberty affects our maturation. After puberty, upon reaching maturation, we look at the process of ovulation. Now that the female is capable and mature enough to bear children, it starts releasing ovum from the ovaries. That is, the unfertilized egg starts being released from the ovaries during the menstrual cycle every month of the year, the 28-day cycle normally. And then comes the last process of fertilization. So when this unfertilized egg, or the egg which is released by the ovaries, meets with a sperm and gets fertilized by that sperm, that is when fertilization happens, or in layman terms, conception begins from there. Now, moving on to the characteristics of prenatal period. This is one of the most important period because it's the first period of development. It's one of the shortest periods as well because it lasts from conception to birth, that is 9 months. It takes 9 months for a baby to be born. Hereditary factors play a role, of course, like I said, the genetic factors. If there are certain genes, if there are certain disorders linked to the genes, they will carry forward onto the child and affect its development. Favorable, unfavorable conditions of the mom's body can impact development. We'll have more discussion over this in the upcoming slides. But on a briefer note, if we see, let's say if the mom is drinking a lot of alcohol, or if she is doing extreme dieting and fast just in order to not gain weight during pregnancy, Those can have an impact on the child's growth and development. The child may be stunted, the child, it may lead to a miscarriage, it may lead to stillbirth or some birth defects in the child as well. Sex is fixed unless changed surgically, of course. Remember, in Unit 1, we talked about the concept of sex and gender. While gender is a more fluid concept, sex is much more rigid. You are born with it. You can't change the anatomy that you're born with until and unless you do it surgically. Most of the growth happens during this period, and it is one of the crucial periods. Hence, it is also subjected to a lot of hazards, which again we will look forward in the next upcoming slides. And that the mother's attitude and mental state during the pregnancy can also have an impact on the development. So, once again, looking over at the fact that the mother's attitude, how she's perceiving the child, if she's happy with this pregnancy, if she is happy with the baby being born. A lot of women undergo, undergo a lot of pregnancy blues where the postpartum depression is the clinical term for it, where they feel depressed and they just feel like not themselves after they give birth to a child. They feel like everything is changing and they feel overwhelmed by it. So such kind of mental states of the mothers can also have an impact on the child because she will not be as warm and nurturing towards the child as she's supposed to be. So all of these factors can have an impact on the child. Periods of prenatal development, on a general, the average human baby is supposed to be born in 9 months. That is the time that is stipulated. It can vary from 180 to 334 days. 70% of the kids are found to be born 36 in between 36 to 40 weeks, while as 98% of the children are born between 34 to 42 weeks. The periods of prenatal development are further divided into three parts: zygote, embryo, and fetus. Let's look at these three parts in more detail. The first period is that of the period of zygote. Over here, the ovum gets fertilized and then becomes a zygote. That is, the ovum, once again, the unfertilized egg that is released by the ovary of the female, gets fertilized upon meeting the sperm. And as you can see in the diagram on the right, that the sperms are meeting the ovum, leading to fertilization. And when this fertilization happens, the end product is that of a zygote. As you can see, there are two cells. It has 46 chromosomes, 23 pairs of chromosomes. The zygote gets divided into two cells, as you can see in the diagram. These two cells further keep dividing and multiplying, and it is these cells that make up our organs. So, as you know, we start our journey of becoming a human being from two cells, which then goes on to multiply and divide, so on and so forth, for each of the organs to be formed. So, this is the stage of the zygote. After zygote comes the period of embryo. It begins on the 15th day after conception till the 8th week. That is, till the embryo is now 1.2 inches. The cells keep multiplying, taking on different functions. This is a time where the embryo, that is the baby, is at greater risk because many teratogens are any substances which, if ingested during pregnancy or anything that the child is exposed to, can cause hazardous impact on the child. So, like diseases like rubella, influenza, measles, or even having poor nutrition or alcohol or cigarettes, etc., can have an effect on the child's development. Kidney problems or hearing problems can be detected at this stage. The heart, brain, and spinal cord start to develop about 3 weeks. The teratogens can cause defects like the heart to grow outside the chest cavity. A very rare abnormality found in humans is that the baby is born with its heart beating outside the body. So that is once again the result of a teratogen. The development of vertebra, lower jaw, larynx, ear, and ears happens in the 4th and 5th week. The development of nose starts, the lung, the fingers, the toes begin. However, the toes and the fingers are still webbed. Webbed as in they are still in a way stuck to each other. So like the way we can separate our fingers because there is gap between them, it's more like this, where they are webbed, stuck to each other, but they are developing. The eyes move forward to place and in position. It starts resembling a human being. The bones form, the genitalia starts becoming a little bit prominent, and the circulation through the umbilical cord starts. In the period of fetus, the embryo is now called fetus. The head makes up one half of the fetus size. Remember that the head is one of the first things or the heaviest organ that the child is born with at the time of birth. It is only after birth that the child's head and body and everything starts coming into proportion and starts settling down. But initially, the head is the heaviest and the biggest organ that the child is born with. The facial features start developing between 9 to 12 weeks. The tooth birth starts to appear. The eyes remain closed till birth. So, like eyes now shut will remain shut, and they will only open when the child is finally born. The genitalia becomes clearly visible. So in Western cultures where they have where the doctors ask, do you want to know the sex of the baby? Like in India, it's banned, but in the Western cultures, the practice is still commonly practiced. So that happens during this phase, wherein up to 9 to 12 weeks, wherein the genitalia has become prominent for the doctors to understand through the sonography if it's a boy or a girl. The footprints and fingerprints develop in the 21 to 24 weeks. The body is now covered in vernix caseova. This is like a cottage cheese like covering that the child has over its body. You have to remember that when the child is inside the mother's womb, there are a lot of fluids, the amniotic sac, the placenta, a lot of liquids and sticky substances that the child is covered with, so as to protect the child and also keep providing him with the nutrition. That is, the nutrition of mother's body reaches the child's body through the umbilical cord. The reflexes, such as that of coughing, swallowing, sucking, starts appearing. There's a rapid brain development, nervous system starts to develop. The fetus begins to store its own calcium, iron, phosphorus. The respiration system develops. Fine body hair starts to disappear, which was there initially, now starts to disappear. And the fetus is now full term. That is, the mom starts producing antibodies to protect it against the diseases. This is the part, like fetus is where the child now starts resembling a human baby more. So you start calling it a baby. All the three periods that we discussed just now can be seen over here. You see the zygote, that is the ovum is now fertilized by the sperms, and now the end product is a zygote. The zygote, then two cells keep multiplying on and on and on into becoming an embryo, and then when it starts multiplying more to form each of the organs, it becomes a fetus, and the fetus, when born, becomes a baby. Environmental influences. What are the different environmental influences on the child? Now, when I talk about environmental is not only things that impact the child after they are born, but also the things that have been impacting the child inside the mother's womb. Because when the child is in the mother's womb, his immediate environment is her womb, the mother's stomach. Her womb is the immediate environment. So, what are the things in her womb that can also have an impact on the child? First is the mother's diseases. That is, if the mother is carrying diseases like that of rubella, measles, it can cause stillbirth, it can cause premature birth, it can cause deafness, miscarriages, mental retardation. Problems like polio and blood poisoning can also have an effect on the fetus. Drugs and chemicals is the second factor, where we have chemicals like that of alcohol or barbiturates or heroin, tobacco, etc., can cause stunning or no fingers or no legs, can cause mental retardation, can cause a growth retardation, can cause a heart defect, respiration problems. Many of the psychological disorders also happen because the mother was consuming a lot of toxins and chemicals during her pregnancy. So many of those disorders also happen at the time because of the drugs and chemicals. Cigarette can cause premature birth and low birth weight. Radiation, excess radiation can cause abnormalities, which is why even the ultrasound or the sonography that keeps happening to check the baby's growth and development is not done every day or every week. It's like the doctors or the gynecologists know how to space it out so that there's not a lot of radiation exposure that happens to the mother's belly. And the fourth factor is that of abortion, wherein abortion, as we are familiar with, refers to the termination of the pregnancy. Either you do it willingly using surgical techniques, or it happens naturally by having a miscarriage. The age of the mother, it is long believed, like science believes, that there is for even for women, there is a time frame in which the woman should try to conceive babies, because her ovum that is released by her body is healthy during those phases, and it's safe for her to carry and bear a child during that age. So those mothers who try to conceive a baby above the age of 35, or those mothers who are way too young, who are below the years of 18, are at a risk of abortion, are at a risk of miscarriage or premature birth, because their bodies are, in case of elder women, their bodies are not having that much of energy anymore, or the strength or the vitality to bear a child. And the as for the younger women, they are very newly developed, like the menstruation and everything is quite new and quite recent. So their bodies are also not strong enough at present to bear another human being, because their own bodies are developing and requiring the nutrients to grow. Sixth, we have the nutrition and diet of the mother. Of course, during the diet deficiencies during the first trimester and the last time trimester, both are important. It's not that ki first trimester mein aapne अच्छे से खा लिया पी लिया and now your child is safe. No, the development of the child keeps happening across the 9 months. So it's important that the mother keeps taking care of her health and keeps eating things, proper food, proper diet, proper nutrients are taken in right from the first trimester to the last one, because it impacts the development of the child. The stress in mother, that is the psychological factors, the mother's mental state, her emotions, her feelings towards the child, towards pregnancy. The mother cannot be stressed at that point when she's carrying a child, because invariably when she's having increased stress response, there'll be an increased activation of the autonomic nervous system, releasing to an increased release of adrenal glands, which can make the body more heightened and more sensitive to stress, thereby leading to the impact and thereby impacting the growth and development of the fetus. And lastly, we have the RH incompatibility. So RH protein, RH is basically an antibody protein. Now, if mom's RH protein is not the same as that of the babies, let's say if a mom is RH plus and the baby is RH minus, then mom's body will start forming an antibody to ward off the RH protein, thereby destroying the child's RBCs. So since she has a plus and the child has a minus and they are incompatible with each other, mom will start making antibodies to fight against or protect herself from the minus. In a way, when her body is doing that to protect her, it's actually killing the baby, because you are making antibodies to fight the baby and its RH protein, thereby impacting the child's development. Looking over at the summary, so in this unit, we talked about what prenatal development is, starting from conception to birth. What are the stages of prenatal development, maturation, ovulation, fertilization? What are the different characteristics of prenatal period? The periods under prenatal development, that are zygote, embryo, and fetus. And lastly, we looked over at the environmental influences and also understanding what are the hazards, or what are the things that can be hazardous to the development of the child. The questions that are important from this unit can be looked upon on the screen. The characteristics of prenatal development, the three characteristics already given. You can go ahead and look at it. The shortest period, the most crucial period, what happens, what are the three stages in which female sex go through. Three stages of maturation, ovulation, fertilization needs to be elaborated on over here. And how can environmental influences affect the development of the infant, which is the last concept we just studied, that is the RH protein, drugs and chemicals, the nutrients, her age, etc., etc. Remember, when you're writing your answers, ensure writing the key terms. The key terms have been highlighted in red in this PPT. Make sure that you use valid clinical terms, as that helps you score better marks. And always make sure to support your understanding of the concept with examples, as that gives the example, as that provides the examiner with a good understanding that the child has understood the concept well and that the student is understanding whatever he is reading. Thank you.